spent about 3 days editing a video, 6 days planning it all out, making it all organized, spent about a week on this video, and YouTube decided to block it and give me a copyright strike on my channel. At first I was really upset. I had no idea what to do, but at the end of the day, all I really can do is try and make a different video that isn't really necessary in a commentary format, because right now I'm super scared to do it in that format, because if I get 2 more copyright strikes, my channel will be permanently deleted, and that is the last thing that I want. If you guys are confused, I made a video called watching the first and last episode of Arcane. I deleted that video now because I'm terrified of copyright strikes now. Basically, after I uploaded that video, everyone was like, how could you do that? You have to watch the whole thing. And after a lot of thought, my curiosity got the best of me, and I ended up watching the whole thing, and I cried, and it was incredible. I wish I could keep that natural reaction up, but YouTube won't let me. So basically, in today's video, I'm going to be talking all about Arcane. This is a video for if you have not watched Arcane, you can kind of get to know what it's about, but warning, there are spoilers because I'm talking about the entire show. So I made a little script kind of thing. If I look at any point during the video like I'm reading something, it's because because I'm very dyslexic and I don't want to get confused on what I'm talking about. I don't want to get off track, and so if it looks like I'm reading, it's just because I am. I'm also going to put like pictures here of different characters, different scenes. I'm going to show as much as I can without, getting copyrighted. So the structure of this video is going to be, we're going to start off with all the episodes. I'm going to go through every single episode, what happens in every single episode, and then at the end I'm going to talk about what I thought about the whole show. I will leave timestamps in the description box below. I will also leave them in a pinned comment so you can go through it and you don't have to just like watch the whole thing being confused. Like if you want to watch a specific thing, it'll all be organized. Episode 1 begins with kind of like haunting, kind of singing. The background is very red. You can tell that they're in a war. There's sudden explosions, and we are met with Vi and Powder walking through the battlefield. You see Vander attacking people. They look broken as they see their dead mother on the ground, and then you see Vander taking Vi and Powder on his shoulder and walking away from the battlefield. That is the intro to the show. Powder and Vi climb up onto the rooftop and make their way across to a workshop / fancy building in the upper city known as Piltover. You can really see the difference in how colorful and bright / clean the upper city is compared to the lower city, which is called Zon. It went completely over my head the first time that I watched it, but it truly shows the difference of how, it kind of shows the difference of even modern day now, how the rich live versus the poor. They did a really, really good job showing that. I'll show like different scenes of what I can't so you guys understand what I'm saying. Vi and Powder are joined by Clagger and Milo. Even though they are worried Vander will catch them, the kids head inside the workshop to steal / sell. So their plan is to steal things from this workshop and then sell them / pawn them off, I guess, in the Undercity to make money. Powder finds glowing blue gems inside and decides to take them with her. Sudden knocking at the door scares her and she drops one in surprise. It rolls across the room. Suddenly it explodes. Their cover is blown. The guards are alerted and everyone is forced to run. I remember finding this scene super cool. You see the guards freaking throwing their things and it misses them just by an inch. Like that scene was really cool, and the fact that they got away through the sewer, love that. Although they managed to get away, they get into an altercation with a man named Deckard and his gang. This scene is packed with action and incredible music to go along with it. It's filled with slow motion shots, why is that word so hard for me to say? Really accentuating each shot. Why did I write that word if I don't know how to say it properly? My brain knows how to say it, but it's hard for me to say it. While all that is happening, Powder runs off to try and get away from one of the gang members. Powder is also cornered on the docks, and with no other choice, she kind of throws her bags into the water to try and distract the man who's currently chasing her. And while the man is like, going towards the water because all the things fell, Powder beats it. She's like, I'm out of here, and she runs away. Milo is very upset when he finds out what Powder did, and he claims that she jinxes every job. When he said this line,
she jinxes every job.
I freaking love that they added that line in the first episode of the show, because it's gonna be her name soon. It's gonna be who she is soon. I like that they did that. They managed to beat Deckard and his gang. Vi did an amazing job, so they head back to the Undercity empty-handed. They enter this elevator and you are met with almost a cyberpunk-esque kind of Undercity. Everything is lit beautifully. Every single character is uniquely put into their own spot, giving each scene and every single character, no matter how big or small, an important part of the story. You genuinely feel like you're down in this Undercity, which I stand by every single thing that I said there. I wish that I could put a clip in this video with the song that they used because it's so amazing, but because I can't, I would just really recommend watching the show on Netflix so you can understand what I'm talking about. Vander is a barkeeper and he oversees proceedings in the lane. When all the kids walk in, he questions them about the explosion that they had caused. Vander reminds Vi that stealing from Piltover isn't going to solve their problems, it'll just cause more of them. After the explosion, he tells them to all to lay low, counting it as a blessing in disguise that the bag has been dropped in the water, the one that Powder dropped in the water when she was being chased by that gang member. He sits down with Vi and he reminds her that she has this responsibility ability to take over the kids, she has to take care of them. She has to be careful of all her choices because anything that she does, they will follow. He just really puts that in her mind. You are a really big figure to them. You need to be careful about what you're doing. After Vander has that conversation with Vi, Vander heads over to Benzo's. The kids heard about the workshop from which they stole from a guy known as Little Man when he's from Benzo's, which is this little store. Vander warns that there's someone playing dirty in their streets, telling Benzo about Vi and Powder being cornered. Enforcers from Piltover appear at Benzo's and start questioning them. So that all happens in the same scene. One of them, meaning one of the enforcers, Grayson, is well acquainted with the guys down in the Undercity. Now, it turns out the workshop belonged to the Curamans. I think that's how you pronounce it, Curamans. I would go into them, but you're going to learn more about them in the following episode, so for now I'm just going to leave them as Curamans. The council in Piltover needs someone to blame, and the only way out is for them to have someone take over the fall. Otherwise, Grayson will return with a whole army of enforcers. So at this point in time, they're basically trying to find someone to blame for the explosion. There's not much that they can do, and they're just kind of like, hey, if you don't give us a name, we're going to come back with a whole army. In the meantime, Powder finds the blue gems in her bag, realizing they hadn't fallen out at the dock. So when she was cornered, that whole bag fell down of things that they collected, but the little blue gems that she had collected, she left in her pocket, so they didn't fall out. Basically, Powder goes over to Vi and, do I tell Vander? And Vi was like, you know what, maybe keep this a little secret. They go up to this little ledge. She gives her kind of a pep talk, telling her like she's stronger than she thinks she is, and promising that the city will respect them in the future because she doesn't want Powder to go through what Vi went through, which is that the upper city will always make the undercity feel so much lower than them and like they're worth nothing. Deckard, the man that was beaten in the streets earlier on by Vi, he breaks the news that the kids are responsible for the explosion. The man that he's talking to seems to be a scientist. He stabs his own eye as he speaks with Deckard, and he decides to use Deckard as his next subject. The episode ends with him being injected with this purple juice / goo kind of thing. We don't know yet what this purple juice is. In the episode, they show them inserting it into a cat, I believe. Not a cat, a rat. All we know from this purple juice is that when it's injected into someone, they're suddenly so much stronger than they were before. That's all we really know, but that's where the episode ends. On to episode 2. We are met with Jace in the opening scene returning to his workshop, the one that the kids recently stole from. Suddenly, the explosion erupts. So in the first episode, you hear the knocking and someone trying to open the door, and that makes Powder freak out, and she drops the blue gem. When that explosion happens, at the same time, it's also happening with Jace. So that is how we are introduced to Jace. Grayson shows up and checks the workshop after the explosion. Jace's research was an independent study. Jace is locked up on orders of the council, claiming that he is dangerous. Jace has been working on the ability to use magic, aka the Arcane, using science to control magic. In his jail cell, he talks to Professor Heimerdinger, the 307-year-old creature. That is adorable, might I add. He tells him not to talk about magic to the council, and if he can do that and stay quiet about what he's been doing, he'll be let free with minimal consequences. When I met Heimerdinger in the show, my immediate thought was, oh my god, this thing is so cute. But also, he seems like he has Jace's best interests at heart, and from that moment on, I liked him. The enforcers show up, quite a few of them this time, determined to find who's responsible for the explosion. They're led directly to Powder and Vi. Realizing Powder's holding a bunch of the blue gems, they shut the lights off and charge through the alleyways. This scene was so cool, and I'll try to add in as much as I can. They're saved by Echo, the boy from Benzo's shop, who was known as Little Man. He throws down a ladder, and they all come up and safely get away. At this point in time, Vander's back at the bar, and everyone is upset and wants to fight back against the enforcers, but Vander doesn't want any kind of war. He tries to tell everyone that peace is the way to go. His loyalty and leadership are questioned, and as we learned earlier, he did struck a deal with Grayson, who is one of the enforcers, and Echo ends up telling Vi and Powder and Clagger that he struck a deal with Grayson. In Piltover, Counselor Medarda oversees Jace's trial. Jace asks for forgiveness, he apologizes about the explosion, and promises to do better. The Academy contemplates just what Jace is doing, though, calling it a fool's errand and a boy playing with tools. Having heard enough, Jace snaps and speaks up, telling them that all he's trying to do is harness magic, and in particular, the Arcane. Thing is, if the Arcane ends up in the wrong hands, it could consume and destroy the city, which Heimerdinger is super passionate about, and he doesn't let him forget it, and he keeps reminding him. Suddenly, Jace's mother appears and pleads for her son's safety, claiming that he did a stupid thing, but he is a smart man who just did a stupid thing. They decide to let him off lightly. He's banished from the academy and forced to stay with his parents for the time being. While the enforcers work to find those who are responsible, Grayson is concerned over how hard they're pushing the guys in the Undercity. The council does not care. The more they push, the more people want to fight back. Jace, meanwhile, returns to his workshop and decides to give up. He stands on the edge, ready to end his life. Just before he does, a man named Victor shows up. He's intrigued by Jace's idea and shares his hope for a better future. He wants to help Jace complete his research, knowing what it's like not to be understood. Now, this scene, I love this scene because of what happens happens in the last episode. There's something that kind of connects the two, and I'm not gonna spoil it yet. Stick around for that. As the episode is about to end, Vander is trying to cheer up Powder by giving her some juice. It's actually a really, really cute scene, and you can see Powder chilling with this little stuffed animal that Vi gave her. Now, when Vander sees the stuffed animal, he realizes that she's preparing to stop the enforcers, and the episode ends there. We start off the scene with someone drowning Silco. We're not sure who it is, but I remember when I was watching this, I was certain that it was Vander. I had a weird feeling that it was Vander. He was talking about how you don't really understand what it's like to be drowning and having filth mixed with your blood, and the toxins all go through your body and things like that. And something in my mind, seeing that massive shadow above Silco choking him, I was just like, I think it's Vander, but I wasn't 100% sure yet. So after that scene, Vander rushes through a door and he catches Vi in the act, and he tells Vi that he loves her and tells her to look after the family and that he understands what she's doing, but she shouldn't be the one to do it. So he ends up locking her in a cellar to keep her away from the danger of the enforcers. As Vander is taken outside by Grayson and Marcus, the enforcers, Silco, the mad scientist, shows up with a mutated Deckard. When I say mutated Deckard, it means that he drank the purple goose juice. He is completely mutated. He is not himself anymore. He's extremely strong. He will kill almost anything in sight. He is under Silco's control. They immediately kill off Benzo and Grayson, and they proceed to knock out Vander. All while this is happening, Vi is being forced to watch from the cellar that she was locked in. So this was very, very hard to watch. I remember when they killed off Benzo, I was just shocked it happened so quickly, and especially Grayson, because I actually liked her. I didn't see, to me, it didn't look like she was trying to do any damage to the Undercity. She was trying to help Vander in the process of not doing that, if that makes any sense. And the fact that Vi had to watch it all and her scream at the end there, that was very, very hard. And I remember when Vi finally gets out and she meets up with Echo, and Echo also saw Benzo get killed, and Benzo was like his father figure, and they hugged each other, and they were just, it was very, very, very heartbreaking. Meanwhile, Victor convinces Jace to break into Heimerdinger's lab/office and take the crystals back from the Enforcer. Victor is determined to prove the council wrong, as they both stay in agreement. Our Hextech dream. So basically what he's saying right now is Victor met up with Jace, and he was just like, I believe in you. We can do this. I believe that we can make the world a better place. And then he was like, you know, I got the keys. The reason they could break into Heimerdinger's lab so easily is because Victor was his assistant. That same night, they break into Heimerdinger's study. But one of the counselors, Medarda, ends up catching them, and they end up pitching the idea to her, and she ends up saying,
"One night, gentlemen."
Victor and Chase set to work, and they begin experimenting on the crystals. Suddenly, Heimerdinger returns to his workshop. As he barricades through the door, the crystals seem to stabilize and prove that the experiments can work. The scene was beautiful. I'll show a little as much as I can of it here. It was really cool. From the beginning, I believed in Jace. I was like, yes, this is gonna work. He's so passionate about it. This is gonna work. And then seeing it actually work was so cool. Vander's dragged off to Silco's lab while all of this is happening, and Silco demands his respect and kind of wants everyone united under one umbrella, aka the nation of Zon. That is his dream, is to have the nation of Zon. Zon is the Undercity. So now we come back to the beginning of the episode where Silco was being drowned, and it is proven to be Vander. He felt betrayed by Vander. As he was being choked by Vander, he manages to grab a knife, kind of slice his arm a little bit, and he manages to get away, but he is not okay, and you can clearly see that on him, and the fact that he has to use this purple poison, like something is off with him. So that is what happened in the beginning. Silco admits that he doesn't have any hate left towards Vander anymore. Actually, he had respected him. He had respected him up until the point when he made a deal with the Enforcers. He felt betrayed by his own brother, and he wanted to know if Vander would like to join him again in raising the nation of Zon. While Vander is still held captive with Silco, Vi and everyone else, they're trying to figure out a plan to save Vander, and that they are planning basically an escape plan for him. After they come up with this whole plan to save Vander, Vi turns over to Powder, and she says, Powder, you have to stay home. You're not ready. And that it was way too dangerous for her, and she gives her this little like light up kind of thing, and she says, anywhere you are, if they get to you and you run away, if you light it up, I will find you. So just light it up. Anywhere that you are, I will find you. And that is a very, very important thing to remember. So Vi, Milo, and Krager sneak in through an open window and walk right into a trap. As they're surrounded, Silco heads towards Vi, but she takes her father's gauntlets and she hits back. She's fit with taking care of all of Silco's people. She hits each one ferociously. Milo is fit with trying to picklock and open Vander's chains, but absolutely none of them know that Powder is watching them from above. She's right outside the building watching them. Deckard overpowers Vi, and she manages to run into a room and lock the door, and then they're all just trying to figure out like, okay, well, what do we do now? Powder uses one of her homemade bombs now. In the first episode, when she was being chased down the docks, you see her use one of her little homemade explosives, and it doesn't work. Just Powder comes out. And that was a main thing in the first episode, where Vi would keep telling her like, don't give up, like one of them will work, you just have to keep trying. While she was sitting back at home, because Vi told her to stay home, she realized that her blue little gems that she had, she can use them to make her explosives go off. And she was certain that it would happen because the building also exploded, so she knew, okay. She basically sets off her monkey, and it's kind of like a wind-up thing, and the monkey goes like this, and then right as it gets to the end, and this is the last thingy like this. Something I really like about this scene is that you are shown the explosion multiple times through multiple different perspectives. You see what happens to Flagger and Milo, which I'm gonna get into in a second. You see what happens to Vi. You see what happens to Vander. You see Powder being like thrown away from the bit. Like, it's really cool that they show each perspective differently multiple times. I really like that. Milo is impaled and thrown against the wall. The ceiling comes crashing down onto him, and Krieger is also wiped out. Those are their death scenes. It shocked me and made me so sad, and I couldn't believe that it happened so quickly. And what hurt the most is that throughout this whole time, you know that Powder's thinking, I'm helping them, I'm doing such a good job. No, they're dead now. Silco is saved by one of his people, which I did talk about, and Deckard survives too. Vander tries to fight back, but Silco sneaks up behind him and stabs him in the back. Vander, after being pushed off the bridge by Silco, uses a bottle of this purple goo that turned Deckard, and he saves Vi's life. It's his last act of selflessness before he passes away. As the entire building is exploding, he grabs Vi and he jumps out of the building, and that ends up saving her life. Powder runs all happy and excitedly down the alleyway towards Vi and Vander, who she doesn't realize is not alive anymore. And she tells Vi all excitedly that her bombs work. In this moment, I was just like, girly, not the time. Suddenly she realized that she caused this devastation. Vi is very cold towards Powder, and in a way, I don't understand how anyone could not be in that situation. I don't blame Powder completely, but at the same time, why did you do that? Powder is a complete wreck, and she falls to the ground with just tears streaming down her face as Vi is just walking away from her, essentially abandoning her. And Milo's glasses are on the ground, kind of a reminder of what just happened, aka everyone dying. Vi kind of went behind a wall just to collect herself. When she looked back, she saw that Silco was on top of Powder, and so she immediately tries running to save her, and Marcus, one of the enforcers, drugs her. Essentially, I guess from that point takes her to the prison, so she's not able to go to Powder even though she wants to, and that really messed me up because it wasn't like she just abandoned her and then left for good. No, she tried to go back and she couldn't. Powder is met with Silco. Feeling betrayed by Vi, she confusingly jumps into his arms and is met with a hug back. Mind you, at this point, she has no idea who Silco is or what he has done. As she's blinded by rage, Silco uses that to his advantage and uses her as a weapon against the others. So that is where we are met with their relationship colliding and them becoming like father and daughter, I guess you could say. Powder feels completely betrayed by Vi, and now she's being taken in by Silco, and that's basically where we're left off on episode 3. A lot of time passes between episode 3 and 4, with changes also within Piltover and Zon. The episode begins with a celebration as Piltover is celebrating the city turning 200 years old. Heimerdinger speaks to Jace about the Progress Day speech after Jace's hex gates have reinvigorated the city. Heimerdinger tells him that he wants Jace to give the speech this year. The reason why he wants him to give the speech this year is because he managed to stabilize the crystals, and they knew that hex tech could become a really good thing for the city. Heading down to the docks, the Firelights show up, which we will learn more about them soon. They plan to track down all the shimmer and burn it to the ground. So the purple juice / goo that I've been talking about till now we learned that it's called shimmer. While this is happening and the Firelights are trying to get rid of all the shimmer, Powder shows up, and she's different now. She is a fighter now. She has mastered her explosive skill. With Silco's twisted ideology, she is now very different. However, she still has a weakness for Vi. One of the Firelights had pink hair. Powder immediately believes it's Vi and hesitates to hurt her. She ends up losing control and blasts everything and almost everyone in sight. Powder and Silco have gotten pretty close at this point, their relationship being a little confusing, almost father-daughter like, but in some cases not really, and it can almost make you a bit uncomfortable watching it. Powder is now going by Jinx. She's paranoid, talking to herself, and completely unstable. I think that they displayed her mental illness extremely well. They did such a good job showing what's going on in her mind. As part of Progress Day, Jace and Victor have been working on Hextech gemstones, fortifying the exterior to avoid being smashed to bits. It also means this technology can be used all over the colony to speed up developments. There's obviously a lot of dangers with this, but Heimerdinger is confident it'll be ready in a decade, but the two men don't have that sort of time. They want it to be ready right now. By two men, I mean Jace and Victor. Jace contemplates going against Heimerdinger while he's doing his speech. He ends up standing up before everyone, and he promises that the gemstones, when they're ready, he can show them everything. At this point in time, Victor is behind the stage. Jace did tell Victor hey, you gotta come up with me, but Victor just isn't into that. He's into making the city well again. He wants to do good in the world. He didn't care about getting the recognition or anything. He just wanted to do a good job. He was expecting that Jace would show them what they've been working on. It would be an incredible show-off moment of all that they've done. he doesn't end up doing that out of fear. This doesn't go well with Counselor Medarda or the guards who questioned Jace's credentials, and he really upset Victor. Victor felt let down by Jace in that moment. While all that is happening, Jinx shows up and she steals the gemstones, leaving graffiti on the walls, which we soon will learn is her signature. She also leaves a fire outside and just complete chaos outside. Jace decides that they should close the hex gates in order to prioritize the safety of Piltover, but the counselors are more concerned about profits. Counselor Medarda notices some potential with Jace, and she suggests that he take a seat on the council with them. So now Jace is a part of the council. So I remember when I was watching this, I was like, how did Jace go from being almost arrested to not arrested to part of the council? What? Jinx returns to the Undercity excited that she has the gemstones. Silco, however, is really unhappy with her for not only acting recklessly, but acting independently, knowing her actions will have repercussions. But when he finds out that she grabbed the gemstone, they end up hugging it out. Caitlin, who we figure out is an enforcer, and she's determined to find out who's responsible for the bombing. That leads her to a hot trail of Silco and his people. She heads to the prison. Caitlin then meets Vi, and that's where the episode ends. Now, at this point, remind you, we haven't seen Vi in a while, so when she comes back, she looks completely different. She has tattoos. She looks complete badass. Now we're on to episode 5. Episode 5 starts off with Grayson and Caitlin in training. It's a very short segment, and you can see Grayson yielding and allowing Caitlin to win. Caitlin questions her afterwards, and she's met with Grayson questioning her and what her intentions are, what drives Caitlin, and what does she want to do. So that's basically where the episode starts off. And I remember when I was watching the show, I was like, I really want to know more about Caitlin, because I don't like when shows introduce characters that have no depth, no purpose to the show whatsoever. And something I really enjoyed about Arcane is that every single episode, every single person, every single little tiny character has a purpose, and no one is left out. Nothing is filler, basically. Absolutely nothing is filler. And so the fact that I wanted to know more about Caitlin, and then they showed me more about Caitlin, and I wanted to know more about this, and they showed me more about this, absolutely love that. After that short little segment, we jump to the present. Grayson is dead now because of what happened at Benzo's place with Vander and the Enforcers and Silco, and the weight of the Enforcer task force is left up to Marcus, another Enforcer. This whole time, Silco is actually manipulating Marcus. Down in the prison, Caitlin learns that there's apparently no record of Vi's incarceration, which seems like someone is covering this up and keeping it quiet. So it's definitely not a surprise when you see that Caitlin wants to help Vi, just because that's the kind of person she is. She wants to help everyone, and she really does give the Undercity the benefit of the doubt. It's just kind of questionable in the beginning, but as she sees what's actually happening, she really has an open mind about it. When Caitlin shows off photos from the lab, especially the graffiti signs, which we now know are Jinx's signature, Vi rushes to the jail gate, like her cell gate. She knows her sister is responsible, but she doesn't say anything. When Caitlin suggests going to the Undercity by herself, and then she realizes, you know, I may need Vi to go down to the Undercity. Victor wants to press on with advancing the city and bring the gemstones into the public eye. For Jace, he's torn between impressing the council, doing right by the city, and continuing his research on top of all of that. That leads him to try his best to root out the corruption running deep into the city, and he asks Marcus to help him out and tighten up the security, which, as we know, that isn't the best idea because Marcus is working with Silco. He's kind of being manipulated by Silco. Medarda is well aware of this corruption and calls out Jace for his actions later that evening. Despite doing what he believes is right, the corruption with trade links back to the counselors. Jace's decision to increase security measures has basically painted a target on his back. In order to smooth things over, encourages Jace to reinstate trade. So using the gemstone as leverage, deals are made as Jace is learning more about the corruption of this world. Jace and Medarda actually end up making that night. Something I really like about Jace and her is that she always believes in him, and the way that she never gives up on him and keeps pushing him to do the right thing, I really like that about their relationship. They did a good job showing that. So while they are making love, actually, Victor ends up unlocking the Hex potential. Unfortunately, he also succumbs to the illness that is plaguing him. He collapses and his blood starts mixing with the magic. Vi and Caitlin at this time head down to the Undercity, following leads to track down Silk. A lot of time has passed here though, and the place is a lot more chaotic than it had ever been before. With Marcus starting to be questionable and his loyalty was being a little questioned, Silco realized he needed to do something. Naturally, he turns to Jinx. He gives her the task of weaponizing the Hex tech while she's dealing with visions from that day of what happened with Clagger and Milo and Vander, and she cannot think straight. That's all that's going through her mind, and she's basically fighting her own mind while trying to make Silco proud, and this girl is going through a lot in her head. Jinx ends up being honest with Silco, and she tells him that she is just struggling right now. She can't stop seeing them that day, and she doesn't know what to do. So he ends up taking Jinx to the same pool that he was betrayed by Vander, and he encourages her to completely let go of Powder, basically kill Powder off and embrace Jinx. He wanted her to let this betrayal go so that she could fully connect with who she was now and completely let go of the past, completely become Jinx. He is determined to make Jinx this bigger and better there, and after that he essentially like baptizes her and he drops her into the water to, I guess, wash away her sin. Meanwhile, while that is happening, Vi follows her intel and finds Savika. The way that she finds Savika is actually, so wait, let me track back a little bit. They actually end up in this, I don't know if it's a brothel or something, but she ends up like telling Caitlin like, yo, you're hot, girl. Like, if you want to get something out of people, you gotta pretend like they got something that you want. No, you gotta pretend that you got something that they want. That's what I meant to say. And so while they're in this, I guess, brothel, I'm not sure, she finds out about Savika. At the same time, Caitlin is getting all cute with this girl, and it was actually really, really cute when Vi sees her and she like smiles. So that was a cute little moment. If you didn't know, Savika was really close with Vander and everyone, and she was the one that did kind of question Vander towards the end. No one would think that she would, become a traitor that would work for Silco. If you didn't already know where this is going, that's exactly what she did. The second she sees her, she just punches her out. Vi ends up kind of beating her. She demands to know where Powder is, and Savika's like, you mean Jinx? And then she was like, huh? So not only did she just learn that Powder doesn't go by Powder anymore, she goes by Jinx, but she also learns that she's working for Silco, the man that she absolutely despises. So she is shocked, and because she's shocked, her group kind of like lets go a little bit, and Savika just stabs her in the gut. As she stabs her in the gut, she says,
She's like his daughter.
before Savika could do any more damage, Caitlin sees her from afar and she like pew 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 pew. She saves her life. She ends up running and saving Caitlin, and then they have this cute little moment that I love. So as the episode ends, Jinx ends up managing to uncover the power of the Hex Tech, and Savika returns to Silco to tell him that Vi is still alive, and that is where the episode ends. Episode 6. We start with Victor's past. This episode kind of starts off where we kind of understand more of why he isn't okay. We understand that he grew up with a lot of poisonous gases around him. We see that he's very confused because if you didn't know, Victor comes from the Undercity, but he ends up working in the Upper City as an assistant for Heimerdinger, but he is always going to be from the Undercity, and he embraces that. He has this like little toy boat, and this little toy boat goes through this little like lake thing. While he's playing with this boat, there's this little girl sitting up on a little rock, and you find out that little girl's name is Sarah. Remember that, okay? So Victor's playing with this little boat, and Sarah's sitting up there. So he ends up following his boat along the river. The boat ends up getting caught into the little cave, and he like runs into the cave. He sees this like monster thing, this like pink monster thing, and he's terrified. But this doctor is like, there's nothing to be afraid of. This little monster is harmless. It's actually dying, and I'm doing anything I can because the mutation has to survive. That is a very important thing, because later on in the story, you're going to find out that he is pushing this thing to survive, not live, and it's actually heartbreaking that he's keeping this thing alive in pain just so that he will survive. That doctor is going to end up giving Victor Shimmer. So they have like a connection from the beginning when Victor was a little kid. So that's just really important to remember. So basically, as we know, Jace and Melva having a little moment, and while they had that little moment, Victor collapsed. He's not okay, so he is currently in like a hospital bed. He is told that he is going to pass away soon, and he doesn't have that much time left. So while he's just kind of dealing with what he just heard and everything, and he's just kind of having a little moment to himself, Heimerdinger shows up, and he reminds him,
It's a sad truth that those who shine brightest often burn fast.
so now the Hex Tech core machine thing has grown kind of a tree. Jace and him are like, oh my god, this is what can keep you alive. That's what they're thinking. What they're hoping is that they can reverse what's happening to Victor, but we're all kind of, as we're watching, we're like, I don't think that's a good idea, because just as they're discussing that, the tree dies. When Heimerdinger comes in and sees the Hex Core, he immediately realizes its danger and urges them to destroy it immediately. He warns them that this is dangerous stuff and that magic could well lead them down a dark and treacherous path. He said that he's seen other places deal with something like this, and it always ended in destruction. He looked over at Victor at one point, and he was like, something's weird about you. And immediately he was like, it's that thing. You gotta get rid of that thing. And from that point on, I'm like, you guys listen to him, come on. At the same time, down in the Undercity, Jinx learns that trouble's brewing with Savika. After tying her up and tricking the woman, Jinx demands to know what's going on, and just like that, Savika opens up and reveals that Vi is back. She also mentions her working with an enforcer, that enforcer being Caitlin. Of course, they're not actually so basically what's happening is Savika is imprinting into Jinx's mind that Vi and Caitlin are against Jinx, and they're trying to steal the crystal, when at this point in time, Vi has no idea what this gemstone is. She doesn't know what this crystal is at all. All she cares about is Jinx. But Jinx is now being tricked, so it's messy. With Vi still alive, Silco turns his attention to Marcus. He pays Marcus's daughter a visit, pointing out all those mistakes that Marcus has made. Of course, this is a passive-aggressive move on his part to force Marcus's hand. He's trying to basically threaten him by saying, if you don't follow what I'm doing, I'm going to either take you away from your daughter or take your daughter away from you. So while all of this is happening, Caitlin is trying to help Vi because Vi is currently barely unable to walk. And so they end up in this lower part of the Undercity, and Vi somehow manages to jump down. I don't even know how she did that because ouch. And while they're down there, Caitlin is starting to realize like how sad it is down there and how poor these people are and how Shimmer has just completely taken over. And even as she's shining her flashlight, like everyone cowers away, and it's a very sad sight to see. And in that moment, she realizes, okay, this is really bad. We have to do something about it. While all of this is happening, she leaves Vi down in this little area and she walks over to try and find help for Vi, and she ends up finding this guy. This guy is actually a throwback to the first episode. In the first episode, Vander ends up helping out this merchant who got in a bit of like a squabble with some people. That same merchant is now here addicted to Shimmer. When you see that, it's very sad. It shows what Shimmer's doing to the city, and it's very, very upsetting. This merchant ends up helping Caitlin with getting the Shimmer that Vi needed to heal. It's a very little bit of Shimmer, but it's supposed to help heal wounds. As she's trying to get this medicine, the person is like, trade, and she's like, ah shit, okay, and she ends up giving up her gun, which I thought was really selfless of her. At the same time, Caitlin is telling the merchant like, hey, you have to come see Vi, like I'm sure she would love to see a friendly face, and the merchant is just like, I don't want her to see me like this. And in that moment, I was just like, can I give you a hug through the screen? And just as I was thinking that, Caitlin gives him a hug, and I was like, oh, thank you. She ends up going to Vi, gives her a bit of the Shimmer, and she like wakes up like screaming, I thought they almost would kiss, but they didn't end up kissing just yet. Well, they don't end up kissing at all, but they might. While all this is happening, Jace is giving orders to have everyone search on the bridge, and it ends up causing a big ruckus. At the same time, they have a council meeting, and at this moment in time, I just wanted to punch Jace out. He decided to cast a vote of getting rid of Heimerdinger. He was like, yeah, I respect you and all, but I think it's time you retire. The vote ends up winning, and while I'm watching this, I'm like, why would you go against this professor who has done nothing but help you, tell you the truth? He is incredibly, like, nice to everyone and helps out, and he's smart. What are you doing, Jace? And in that moment, my heart broke for him. Seeing Heimerdinger just walking around the Undercity, like, all by himself, like, Vi recovers from her wounds. She's all good now, but suddenly she's surrounded by Silco and all of Silco's people. So Caitlin and Vi managed to escape. They basically knocked down a huge wood thing, and the whole panel that was holding everything up of where they are just comes crashing down, and so they managed to get away from Silco. So at the same time, while all of this is happening, this is kind of emotional, Jinx walks up and you see her holding the light that Vi gave her, and she just goes, pachoo, and blue light just ensues all around her. And the whole time while I'm watching this, you have to remember, while she's doing that, a montage of all the tragedies that have happened to all the characters, and Caitlin and Vi trying to get through, it's very emotional, the whole montage of everything happening. And the whole time you're just thinking, like, come on, Vi, look up. Sure enough, as they're about to walk away, Vi looks up. It's really, really touching when Vi sees Powder again. They hug it out, but it doesn't last very long because Powder sees Caitlin, and then she was like, you're against me. She genuinely believes that Vi is after this gemstone, and she's like, what, you only care about this? And Vi is like, I don't even know what that is. While they're going through all of this and they're confused, and Caitlin's like, what's going on? The fire lights appear at the same time. In this moment in time, we don't know who the firelights are because they wear masks. So while Vi is trying to fight off the firelights because she doesn't know what's going on, Caitlin's also trying to help her. You just see Jinx giggling, laughing with every shot she's doing. That is just Jinx. While all this is happening and everything's blowing up and there's dust everywhere, suddenly Jinx notices that the gemstone and Vi were both taken, and she just collapses and she starts screaming. That's the end of the episode. On to episode 7. Caitlin and Vi are tied up because they were taken by the firelights. They end up taking Vi into this little room. The leader takes off his mask, and she realizes that it is Echo. After all these years, it is Echo. They have a little joke here and there, and they're kind of funny, but they end up hugging. Echo does end up crying a little bit. Eventually, Echo does take Vi to their main base of operations. The firelights aren't all bombs and fighting, as Echo talks about the descent of the lanes. Silco did flood the place with Shimmer. It caused everyone to send down a dark path of addiction. It kind of shows how the real world is with drugs, and I think it's very cool that they did such a good job comparing the two. Maybe comparing isn't the right word, but the fact that they managed to bring such real issues into this show and show it in such a respectful, serious, real way is really cool. At this point in time, Vi still thinks that she could save Powder from becoming Jinx, but Echo is convinced that it is a lost cause. When Caitlin is released, she's faced with the horrible truth that Silco is paying the enforcers to hunt down the firelights. Caitlin refuses to believe this until Echo shows off the gemstone and offers a solution. He believes that they can fight fire with fire. However, Caitlin has an alternative. She wants to give the gemstone to the council, and she wants to offer a peaceful solution. Victor finds himself at a crossroads, trying to decide what's best for his future. And this is what I was talking about before with the doctor offering Victor Shimmer. He doesn't really know what to do. He doesn't know if he should take the shimmer and live on or if he should let himself die. He's in this weird place. So while all of this is happening with the border shut down, Jace ends up going to Mel. In that moment in time, he felt the pressure of everything, and he just wanted to have a place to vent and a place to just feel loved and comfortable and safe and protected. He just needed a second to breathe. And while we're going through that, we also find out that Mel was actually kicked out of her hometown by her mom, and you see her like painting this whole thing of what happened. Mel ends up comforting him, and they just have a really cute moment. After all of that happened, Jace ends up going to the bridge, and he ends up trying to talk to Victor, and he ends up being very upset that Victor went down to the Undercity because that's how he ended up getting the shimmer. He ends up telling him like, how could you go down there? We can't trust them. And Victor's like, we can't trust them, they're dangerous people. I'm from the Undercity. And that's when Jace is like, shit, I'm being an asshole. And he was like, I'm sorry, man, I didn't mean that. And then he goes, so did you like find anything from your friend? And even though he had the shimmer, the doctor did give him a chance to do something. Victor ends up keeping it to himself. I guess because of how Jace has been acting, he just didn't think that it was a good idea to let Jace know what he was planning on doing. While all of this is going on, Silco is just kind of in his own head. He's very, very flustered and worried about Jinx. And because he's so worried about Jinx and he can't think about much else, some of his people are starting to question him and go against him, in particular, a guy named Finn. So while they're questioning Silco, and Finn is kind of like thinking that he's winning and he's going off on Silco's like, did you forget who is the boss here? And he gases up the whole room. He ends up tormenting Finn a little bit until Finn ends up not necessarily apologizing, but being like, you're right. And he ends up getting like the little gas mask to help him breathe because of the gases. But let's just say they all realize Silco's in charge. When Silco heads back to his office after all of that just happened, Jinx shows up and she confronts him about it. However, Silco manages to talk his way around it. So even though she confronted him about all these lies, he managed to somehow just talk his way around it and managed to focus her attention onto the thing that they had to do and how he needs her now more than ever. So it kind of didn't go anywhere. The descent in Piltover and everything that's happening in the Undercity is just starting to prove that Piltover is very, very vulnerable, and a lot of the council members just start to get super nervous. Mel feeds her concerns back to Victor and Jace, encouraging them to use the Hex Tech to defend themselves. Of course, this flies in the face of what they initially agreed to do, and it kind of shows the connection that Jace and Victor had from the beginning, what they both agreed to do and why they both started this in the first place. They believe that a war is coming. It just gets all that more crazy from here. Victor goes back to his little office room area and he injects himself with the shimmer. Caitlin and Echo head above ground and walk towards the council, intending to talk their case. Vi, however, has an ulterior motive for being there. She wants to find Jinx. The thing is, she's already there. She does not know that Jinx is right above them. She just happens to be watching from the top of the bridge. It gets kind of crazy because Echo and Caitlin were stopping enforcers, and Caitlin's like, no, wait, you guys, like, and she shows them a sign that she's like a part of them, and she's like, you guys, we need to just talk it out. I have the gem right here. Just give me a second. And Echo like opens up the box that's holding the gem, and he is just immediately shot down, and what looks to be like a whole bunch of fireflies starts to like ensue them and just surround them. And only after a couple seconds do you realize those are not fireflies, those are little mini bombs. As it explodes into like a green type of bomby powder thing, Echo, Caitlin, Vi, and Jinx end up fighting over the gemstone. Echo did not end up dying, thank God. I forgot to mention this. This is really cool. When Caitlin and Vi are standing there like looking at Jinx, suddenly there's explosion, and when Caitlin and Vi separate, Echo comes coming through on his hoverboard, and I think that's such a cool scene. So basically Echo tells them like, yo, you gotta get out of here. I'm gonna deal with it just like you guys go, and they end up going. Jinx and Echo end up fighting it off, and I thought this was the coolest scene ever. I loved it so much. Their fight is very colorful, first of all. The music that they added, the action that they added, but they also added in how they used to play as kids, and I think that that is such a cool added tone. Does that make sense? I will try to add scenes here so you guys understand what I'm saying. They basically mixed Echo and Jinx versus Echo and Powder, and then they mixed it together. They did such a good job of adding those two scenes together, making it almost bittersweet, because at some point you're like, oh, they were friends, this is so cool, but then you're like, damn, now they're trying to like kill each other. After a certain amount of time, Echo ends up having Jinx held down by the throat, and then an explosion from one of Jinx's bombs just like set off. She is just not okay, and Echo just kind of like disappears after that, and then that's where the episode ends. Silco arrives shortly after that happened, and he finds Jinx a mess and she's unconscious on the bridge. He kind of holds her as if like she's a baby, like he's his daughter. She's his daughter. As he's holding her, he notices, oh, She has a gemstone in her hand. Vi and Caitlin also see this, and they realize that this whole struggle, and they also, at this time, they're also thinking that Echo's dead because of the explosive that happened. They all think this was for nothing. What are we doing? So Caitlin and Vi end up sneaking into Caitlin's room, and what's funny is Vi is like, where are we? Where the fuck are we? I think her mom like busts through with a gun, and their faces are to die for. Their faces are priceless. I said in the beginning that I wouldn't explain who the Kiramans are. Now you know. The Kiramans is Caitlin's family. It's Caitlin's family. So she's a Kiraman. They're part of the council. They're on the higher upper part of town. Like she's, you know, she's upper city. Vi ends up staying in the room a little bit, and Caitlin's like, okay, like mom and dad, please, can you listen to me? Like what's going on down in the undercity is not okay. We have to tell the council. There has to be something that I can do. At first the mother's kind of like against it, but the father, if our daughter's so passionate about it, we got to do something about it. The mom says, okay, you can, but just plan like accordingly, because the council's not easy to please and you have to just prepare. So while that is happening, guess who decides to randomly show the fuck up? Mel's mother, Mrs. Medarda. She decides to step foot in Piltover, and you can notice off the bat that they don't really have like a loving connection. There's nothing there. She's just kind of like, what are you doing here? Get out of here. And her mom's like, I just came for, you know, what's up? I just want to see. I just want to taste the cuisines, you know? Mel is just not having it because she was abandoned by her mom. Her mom basically exiled her. So she just was like, okay, you can leave. You're not welcome here, you know? They don't really explain much else. She's just kind of like, nice to see you, daughter. And she's like, okay. And then the mother just kind of disappears to go taste the cuisines around the city, which if you didn't know what that meant boys. Mel's mother only came to Piltover to talk to Mel because she wanted the Hextech weaponry because this other place killed her brother, her son, and so she wants to use the Hextech weaponry. She wants to use Jace and use that, and Mel is like, you better get the fuck away from Jace and you better get the fuck away from the weaponry because you're not going to use it just for that. And that's the whole reason why she came. Mel doesn't like that she just came for that. She doesn't like that she came just for the Hextech weaponry. Because Mrs. Medarda tried to talk to Mel and it just didn't work out, she turns to Jace and she has a conversation with him while she is butt-ass naked in a bathtub. And that's not the worst part. She ends up getting up from the bathtub and she's up standing right next to Jace naked. Ew! That's not normal! She basically tells Jace, you gotta embrace war, it's gonna happen. If you don't fight back now, you're gonna end up down in the dumps, like da-da-da-da-da, like you gotta blah, 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 blah. She basically says so many things that just rattle him up inside, and he ends up being like, shit. At this point, she's like, okay, I succeeded. I got him to think about it. Maybe he'll focus on a war now. So meanwhile, Silco is running with Jinx to this doctor that is the same doctor that is connected to Victor, and he's basically like, you gotta help Jinx, like I don't want her to die. And so the doctor's like, okay, I'll help her. You cannot be conscious while I do it because you will drive me crazy. And so he puts a syringe into Silco's neck and Silco passes out and he starts taking care of Jinx and trying to make her conscious again. At this same time, Finn ends up talking to Savika. Finn is basically trying to get Savika to kill Silco and go behind his back. And then while we're watching this, we're like, is she actually gonna do it? Because they didn't make it clear or not. In that same moment, you're like, will she actually go behind his back? Meanwhile, Heimerdinger is down in the Undercity. He's trying to understand what's going on. He's trying to offer them aid. He actually ends up meeting a little girl and he creates out of bolts like this little spinny thing, and it's actually a really cute moment. But he ends up seeing like firsthand the amount of destruction and chaos and just horribleness that is going on in the Undercity. As he's in the process of leaving the Undercity, he actually runs into Echo and they get to talking and they end up having like a cute conversation. Heimerdinger's like, Echo, you gotta get medical help because you're not okay. Because apparently he did live from the blast, but he did sprain his ankle. So we love that when we found out because we love Echo. This is where it all goes down a little bit and gets a little crazy. Vi and Caitlin go into the council house, whatever you want to call it, and they start pleading their case. They start explaining what's been going on in the Undercity. They're trying to get everyone to see. Vi is kind of like, war, like we gotta do this. In this moment when all of this is happening, Jace looks kind of confused. We're not really sure where his head's at. It almost seems like he agrees with the fact that they need to push for war, but he's also, I don't think that's a good idea. So we don't really know where Jace stands in this. The whole council ends up completely disagreeing with Vi. She ends up storming out and leaving. This is a really sad part. When Caitlin runs after her, she's like, what about us? Like, why are you just gonna leave? Vi compares them to oil and water and that they just don't mix and they never will. And she goes, just forget you ever met me. And she walks away and poor Caitlin is just standing there like, what the fuck just happened? That one hurt a lot. Victor continues to play with the shimmer, and at one point he reaches out for the hex core, and the hex core just kind of swallows him in almost. And while all of this is happening, Sky, who I accidentally referred to earlier as Sarah, I don't know if it's just the S and S that got confused in my head, but Sky, she's practicing the speech to tell Victor. And mind you, the whole time, in a couple earlier episodes, she kept trying to ask him out and he just didn't really get the hint. And so the whole time while she's walking over to his office, she's like, Victor, I had this whole thing that I wanted to tell you about. Victor, I planned this whole thing. Victor, I've been thinking. And it just go on and on about that. And just as she gets to his door, she opens it up and she sees Victor. I can't even explain. I'm just going to show it. And so she immediately runs over and she grabs Victor. She ends up being disintegrated. And that genuinely broke my heart when I watched it. Victor is just shocked. And the one thing that he noticed the second she disappeared were her glasses. And in case you didn't realize, that girl that you saw, the girl that I spoke about in the beginning, who I accidentally referred to as Sarah, is Sky. So Sky and Victor have actually known each other their whole lives, and I think that's such an incredible thing to almost miss, but when you figure it out, such a cool fact, and it just shows how much detail they put into this show. Vi just has not had enough. She's not willing to walk away. She's not ready to walk away, so she goes up to Jace and she basically proposes this idea. She believes that if her and Jace team up together, they can stop the supply of Shimmer. They could shut down his operation by force, where it starts in the factories, kind of. And so they start, and I'm gonna be honest, like when they start, it's a really cool thing. Like there's a lot of cool music attached to it. There's a lot of cool scenes attached to it. I really like what they did. Also, Jace has this massive fucking hammer that is so cool. It takes a really, really bad turn with Jace accidentally strikes a child while he's trying to strike all these like robot Shimmer things, and the child falls and just bleeds out. When he realizes the whole operation has been conducted by children, he is just completely flabbergasted. As the episode closes, you see Caitlin in the shower and she's just completely devastated that Vi just walked away from her, and as she walks out of the shower, she like cleans up the steam a little bit, and suddenly she looks behind her and there's drinks, and the episode closes there. And now we were on to the last episode. I would like to say something. I'm a little afraid that I'm missing some like little things here and there, because while I was talking about something, I thought about that scene where Jace is in the room making these weapons and Mel comes and just comforts him. There's little things like that. There's so many things that build each character that I'm afraid I'm missing, but because of this format, I'm just trying to get in as much as I can for it to make sense, and I'm really trying my best not to forget anything. So if I did forget anything, I really don't mean to, and I would really appreciate if you left it in the comments down below so that other people can learn more things and I can learn more things, because I'm sure there's still a bunch that I don't know, which I think is so cool. You could just learn so much from the show and rewatch it a bunch of times, but yeah, I wanted to get that out there. So episode 9 begins with Jace just completely broken. He is like, I'm done with this. We are done. I'm not continuing this anymore. This is not for me. I can't do this. And Via's like, okay, it's one kid. Do you know all the other hundreds that have come from what is going on? Like, we can't stop. Jace was like, return the gauntlets, because she took gauntlets from him, and she was like, make me, or I'm not gonna stop. Like, I have to finish this battle. It's my own battle. He ends up just walking away. He's done with it, and now Vi is on her own, essentially. So Vi walks up to where one of the Shimmer thingy was. She punches it out, and then you see Silco in front of what Vi just punched out, and Vi is gone, and a woman's yelling because she's part of Silco's people, and she's like, my son is dead. Like, how did you let my son die? Oh, what, Jinx is gonna take care of it? Things like that. What Finn is hoping is that Savika will look at this and be like, goddamn, maybe Finn's right. Maybe I do gotta go against Silco. So while they're sitting in this room, Silco's like, yeah, your son died, but he did it for a good cause, things like that. And at the same time, Finn's looking up at Savika, thinking that Savika's gonna just slash his throat. And she ends up slashing Finn's throat because she is not gonna go against Silco, even though she went against Vander. That's one of the things that they did where you're like, I know I'm supposed to hate this character, but damn, she didn't go against Silco. Like, I respect that. So yeah, and then Silco was like, were you tempted? And she was like, not for a snake like him. Meanwhile, Mrs. Medarda is approached by her daughter, who demands that she stay away from Jace and leave the city. So at this point in time, her mom is like, oh yeah, I abandoned you because you made me weak. And then she was like, you deserve a place by my side. You need to come home with me. You belong with me, things like that. And it's just kind of, you could see that she's saying, I love you to Mel, but it seems too broken at that point it seems too broken at that point. At this point, we're left with like, what is Mel gonna do? We find out at the end of the episode, kind of. Remember what I said in the beginning of the episode, how something happens that connects to the last episode? While Victor is just completely heartbroken, he just poured all of Sky's ashes into the water, and he kept her glasses with him. And mind you, before that happened, he actually ended up going through all of Sky's notes and all of these things that she collected for him. He ends up finding this note that she wrote for him, and it's very heartbreaking. So this scene was very heartbreaking overall. He looks down, and he's just about to jump, and who stops him? Can you guess who stops him? Jace. Jace stopped him. And I think that is so cool that in the first episode, Victor saved Jace, and in the last episode, Jace saved Victor. Victor basically tells Jace, like, you need to destroy the Hex Cube. I can't do it. He basically says that in the pursuit of the great, they've forgotten to do the good, and the only way out is to stop this from escalating. So he's kind of like, Jace, please do it. You can see that Jace understands that it's kind of what has to be done, and we know that just Victor can't do it. Jace ends up walking across the bridge, and he meets up with none other than Silco. They are trying to do a peace treaty. The nation of Zon wants free route trades, blanket amnesty, unrestricted access to the Hex Gate, and sovereignty. You can obviously tell, like, Silco's just kind of pushed Jace as much as he can, because you know Jace won't just give that up. And then Jace has just had enough with all the horrors of the wars that has happened, and he just says, you know what? You give me Jinx, you get your nation of Zon. It's genius because you know that Jinx is Silco's his weak point, but we also know that he would never, ever do that to Jinx. And you're just put in this, like, weird conundrum of, like, what the fuck's gonna happen now? After this, Jace heads back to the council, and he tells them all that he broke a peace treaty with Silco, and they are all absolutely outraged. It ends with everyone just screaming. Shortly after that, it cuts to Vi. She's at a bar, and she is not ready to give up on Savika. She wants to beat Savika, and what's really cool is as she's going at it with Savika, they do like a little shot outside, and you see that Vi has already taken out all of the guards outside. She's that extremely strong and badass. Unlike their first encounter where Savika was kind of pushing on Vi a little bit and almost winning, this was a lot more fair, and Vi was definitely winning. And there's a point where Vi collapses onto the ground, and you could tell that she's almost ready to give up. Suddenly she has this vision of Vander, and it's so emotional, and Vander basically tells her, you got this, I believe in you, they still need you, I know it's hard, it's not gonna get easier, but you've got this. And he kind of gives her that little push that she needs, and she ends up getting up, and she beats Savika, beats her. She's done. She realizes that Savika's down. She kind of like falls to the ground and just screams out in exhaustion. When she gets back up, you see Jinx behind her, and Jinx like, boop. When Vi regains consciousness, she finds that she's sitting at this table. Across the table, she sees that Silco's also there, and Silco has like a thing over his mouth so he can't speak. She slowly hears Jinx talking, and she goes, am I being held by Jinx? And you slowly see around the table that she set a place for Clagger, and she set a place for Milo, and she also set a place for Jinx and Powder. And slowly after that, she ends up bringing Caitlyn out as well, because as you know, at the end of the other episode, she also captured Caitlyn. And so that's the table right now. That's the dynamic that we have, and it's a really intense scene. She's basically looking at Vi, and she's like, okay, what chair should I choose? Like, it's up to you. She actually says something really interesting, where she says, Silco thinks that he made Jinx, but he did not make Jinx. You made Jinx. With everything that you said constantly going around in my head, I wouldn't have been alive without you. She was telling that to Vi, and I think that was very important to her character. While they're all talking about this, and she ends up removing Silco's thingy that was stopping him from talking, Silco was like, she will never be Powder, she is Jinx, and they end up just like trying to fight it out, and while they're fighting it out, Caitlyn ends up freeing herself from her chains or whatever she was attached to. She holds a gun to Jinx, but Via's like, no, like, that's my sister, and Caitlyn is like, she's too far gone now, this isn't your sister anymore, it's Jinx. And the whole time while I'm watching this, I'm just thinking, okay, she loved Powder, could she love Jinx? And I said that in my previous video, and it still sticks to me so truly, because I don't think she could love Jinx, and she's Jinx now. So it's heartbreaking. While Caitlyn is like questioning if she should do this or not, Jinx basically grabs the gun and she prepares to fire. While she grabs the gun, Silco is also grabbing Jinx's gun, and it all happens really, really quickly. And then suddenly there's like a bunch of bullets that like Jinx is shooting out. Silco is just shot dead. As Jinx realizes what she did, she like runs over, and she just starts apologizing, and she's like crying. She's heartbroken. She can't believe she did what she just did. And he just says, like, don't apologize, you're perfect. He says, like, I promise I would have never given you up, you're perfect. It was very, very hard to watch, and that made me cry. After all of that happened, Jinx just kind of stands up, and you could see something in her eyes changed, and she's just like, okay, I'm Jinx now. And she goes to the chair that says Jinx, and she sits down, and you could just see everything in her slip away, and she's just like fully ascending into this evil persona that Silco kind of created. Jinx ends up grabbing the gemstone and her gun, and she ends up taking off. Caitlyn and Vi end up like kind of walking out, trying to see like what's going on. As the council members are starting to agree with Jace for peace, you could see Mel take off her ring. I think that ring was connected to Noxus, like where she's from and her family, where she was exiled from. And then just as that happened, you see the rocket that Jinx fired hits the council window. And so we don't know who's alive. We don't know anything. And at the same time, you see Caitlyn just absolutely distraught because her mom and dad are there. And that broke me. And so now this is where we are right now. Really, really, really curious about season 2. Really excited for it to come out. The show is a whirlwind of emotions. That's all I can say. I don't think I could explain how incredible this show was. I think I said it in this video, how they chose each character, each voice for each character, every single style for each character, even the little ones that are just, if you're walking down the street and you see a little one sitting there, it just adds to the show. Everything is so meticulously picked out perfectly. They did such a good job. There is truly not a show like this. Every single song that they chose was incredible for each scene, although I saw someone commented on my last video that the songs were made for each scene, which is even cooler. You truly feel enwrapped in this world when you're watching it. And something really, really incredible about this show that I will never, ever, ever stop saying is that somehow this show gets you to love every single character, good ones and bad ones. You end up loving every single person. I also really enjoyed that there were no filler episodes. Nothing was filler. Nothing, you're not sitting there watching it going, okay, come on, like, get to the point. There wasn't a point that I felt that at all. I could not even get started on the animation. The animation is absolutely incredible, something I've never seen before. They did such an amazing job with it. Every single movement, you can feel it, you can see it. Every single character, like, their emotions were so clear. This show is just incredible. I'm sure I'm missing out on a lot of things that I wanted to say, but I have been filming for a very long time now, and I've said a lot, and I don't want this video to be like 3 hours long, so I want to stop now. But if you guys have anything that you want to add in, please leave it in the comments down below. I'd love to hear more. I'd love to learn more. I'd love for others to learn more. I had such a fun time filming this, and I hope this video comes out good. I'm going to work really, really hard on it for you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys like my videos, make sure to subscribe. If you guys like this video, make sure to give it a big old thumbs up. And if you have anything that you'd like me to check out or anything that you would like to say, make sure to leave it in the comments down below. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. See ya!